All right, thanks for everybody for coming out. I don't know if you went over to the other room first, but I did. It's definitely a much better looking crowd than that one, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. And friendlier, I want to say. My name's Mike Neuenschwander. I'm with IC Consult now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit, first of all, before we get started, about IC Consult. IC Consult is a collaboration that we started in Germany, actually, and I've known the owner and CEO of the German company IC Consult GmbH for quite a while, over a decade, and got talking to him a little last year, roughly about a year and a half ago or something, and we realized that we both wanted to do something in the United States, and so at that point we decided to get together, and I'm now running the IC Consult Americas, which we just started last October. And we have a couple of great running projects, and we, together with the IC Consult Group, have over 130 employees. We're expanded in 4 countries already, and we're doing quite well. So we have a booth over here today. We have more M&Ms if you run out, right? So those are fun, and I've eaten a pound of them already. So do me a favor and come over and grab some. But first of all, let me give you my client list. I've actually, some of you may recognize me from other places that I've been before, mainly at Burton Group, I would suppose. But I was the research director at Burton Group for quite a while. I want to say 8 years I was at Burton Group. So it was a fun time. But I've also worked at Intel and Novell and at Microsoft for a while, and Accenture, and most recently Oracle. And then finally started this company to help everybody out, right? So we are an integrator, and we have actually, given that we're a large company, have done quite a few projects with quite a few large customers, right? And one of them I'm happy to announce is speaking at this conference tomorrow. That is Live Nation, owners of Ticketmaster.com, for example. And so Ken Reggio is going to be speaking tomorrow about cloud as well. So I hope you will be able to attend that one. All right, well, then moving forward to get to the topic of the day, about the fabric of the cloud, which is sort of a weird metaphor, I guess. And I think the Ping people probably thought long and deeply about that before they really threw it out there. Anyway, you did, right? Yeah. So, but the thing that occurs to me, we've done. By the way, can you hear me? Okay? Is this working out? Yeah. Back in the room. Okay. As we've done many projects in many different countries and so on, what we're finding is that we're starting to get a lot more consumer-facing and business-to-business kinds of portal, cloud service kinds of projects around identity management. And as we do that, of course, having been in the industry as long as I have, and just given that there are existing products out there, we've definitely advised our clients, and we've moved forward on the basis of the existing technology. Right? And so over the course of the last 10, 12 years, whatever it's been since you've been in identity management, you've probably observed that there's been a change in the materials that we use to build identity systems. However, at the same time, the underlying technologies tend to remain pretty constant. I remember back in the industry, if you remember back in the day, there's like, we need authentication. So we in the identity field responded with, okay, well, let's take DAP and we'll make it LDAP. Okay, it'll be easy because that's all they need is authentication. They'll say, well, okay, now we need web authentication. All right, we'll take web LDAP and we'll add some, web access management to it. And for good measure, we'll throw on some SAML, right? If you're familiar with these protocols. All right, now we need access control. So we add provisioning, and we call this whole thing identity management now. And then we say, well, right, we need some mobile stuff. It's like, okay, we'll add some OAuth to that, And so the question becomes, all right, so now there's cloud. All right, and we as an industry are responding, and I mean mainly sort of product and technology sort of vendors. We're saying, okay, well, why don't we take all that stuff we've developed over the last 15 years and apply it to cloud, right? What's a reasonable response? That's what we've been doing forever, and it's been a great career, by the way, right? Like I've made a great career out of this thing, right? But let's face it, it's the same stuff. But the question, I think, is relevant to say, all right, is the cloud model really congruent with the heritage of identity management technologies and products? Or are we dealing with something that is really challenging us to maybe rethink the whole thing? And I know there's been a few opinions on this. I mean, some of you have said, Ian Glazer, for example, has been out there talking about, maybe we need to kill it and start over kind of thing, right? And we've debated that, and maybe that's a good idea for some customers. But I think the question itself is, in fact, relevant. I mean, take a look at some of the differences of the design model just between sort of enterprise identity management and the heritage that it came from versus where we are right now in the cloud. So back then, you had some administrator, who was appointed to sort of like sit there and figure everything out, and he had some GUI that he used that was really cryptic. If you're lucky, it was sort of GUI, right? Then there's some HR database somewhere, or maybe 2 or 3 of them, or maybe 24, I don't know, but at least there's some database out there where at least you had some reliable record of who all the employees were, the people that needed access, and so on. And somebody, of course, watched over that HR thing, right? And there could be this beautiful data feed, okay? Great, it might have been a little bit dirty, but at least it was there, right? And so you could set up this data feed that essentially created, accounts for you, and also gave you information about who should be accessing certain things. And then, of course, they would treat us all like sheep, and we would sort of, we would all sit around and sort of get our accesses sort of handed to us, or taken away, or whatever it ended up being. Of course, there's the black sheep in there. I like that as well, and that person needed to be removed from the herd or whatever. But the problem is, in today's world, we don't really have an administrator model. If you start thinking about what the cloud is, I mean, who's really the administrator on the cloud service for everybody? And there's really no decent HR feed. What we see today is more a situation where, in fact, at IC Consult, we're dealing more with, instead of the classic IT department folks, we're dealing more with like an engineering team. And these engineering teams are building cloud services, and those cloud services are meant for certain customers, right? And these customers are usually business people, right? That have some business function they're trying to get done, and aren't really highly technical like our old IT friends were, right? And they basically are dealing directly with their customers, which is a very diverse crowd. A lot of them don't really have any technical expertise or background, and they're certainly not cheap. These are the ones that are sort of driving the use of this thing. And so the model has become very, very different, right? We can't assume that the users of the cloud system will be forced to use the system like an employee would be, right? So for example, you have a customer that needs to use your cloud service, to perform I don't know, like program management or whatever there is that they're using from you, right? Well, in the cloud there's like dozens of options, right? They're not captive. They can go use whatever they need to. Whereas in the enterprise world, we're assigning you're going to use the SharePoint server, and I don't really care if you think it's ugly, right? Like, it's part of whatever you want to check, you're going to use it, right? So the other thing is that there's actually quite a few other design differences in the way you go about constructing a cloud service and how you go about using it than the traditional enterprise identity management. There's this mandate, first of all, to have extremely high scale and high availability at very, very, very low cost. In other words, part of the reason the administrator is not like involved is you really just want things to be automated, self-service. If somebody wants to go provision themselves a new, Amazon service or something, you literally have to, the person putting in the credit card is driving that, right? And it has to be essentially be cookie cutter, so they bring it back up. If somebody at Amazon actually had to go pull a wire or actually install something or do whatever on that service, already the cost metrics are way out of control, right? So it's just not going to happen. So we need this repeatable service-based kind of deployment. So to do that, we really need rapid deployment to dozens of environments, right? You're running a website, and by the way, are many of you actually running sort of your own cloud services? I don't mean own cloud. I mean your yeah, that's funny, right? So who's actually a cloud provider out there? And even if, yeah, okay, I see a few. All right, so, and then the rest of you, what, are any cloud users out there? Yeah, more on the user side? Okay. So we do a lot at IC Consult on the, well, kind of both, but mainly we've been doing a lot of cloud provider help. Like, how do you get a service up for somebody and have an identity and security component of that, right? So we're very interested in how do you then rapidly deploy a product, right? In this case, maybe even a packaged product to dozens of environments, and moving it very rapidly where we're looking at trying to get every couple weeks some new feature or something out to production so the cloud itself is continually evolving, right? We also are using, obviously, virtualized environments and so on to get to this idea of an elastic cloud, of an on-demand change in capacity of what we can do. A lot of our customers have peak periods, and then really, when it's not a peak period, a lot of that stuff just kind of sits around. So we don't necessarily want to pay for, crazy amounts of compute capability when, in fact, we only need it twice a year or something, right? So multi-tenancy, of course. Like at Live Nation, at one of our clients, they interact with all these venues across the world. And each venue is essentially its own tenant. They have their own space that they have to manage, their own people. If you own Madison Square Garden or something, you need to, you have a number of people that work at that venue, and you have to have them have access to the concerts and things that are going on there, or the basketball games, or whatever it may be. They're their own tenant. And some other venue shouldn't have access to what you're doing or seeing what you're pricing things at. And in fact, that's kind of a big no-no, right? So the multi-tenant aspect of this thing is also often not anticipated in some of the products that you use today for identity management. Personalized app presentment on login is another thing. So when you're coming into a portal, I'm a user, and maybe on your portal you have 100 different applications that anybody could potentially get to, but based on what what group you're coming in as, and based on who you are in that group, and based on what your group is actually paid for, right? These sorts of things, you're only going to see a certain number of these, some fraction of that 100 app, but maybe you want to add that, so you also need to see what you can buy, right, and that sort of thing. So this is something that isn't, even though it sounds familiar, it's not something that's been anticipated by many of the products. If you look at the access management products, if you look at provisioning products and so on, it's not necessary, it's not out of the box to sort of make this functionality work on a portal. Okay, so it doesn't happen. So another one is I alluded to earlier. In fact, data firewall and data sharing. If you're in a multi-tenant environment, you can't just assume that everybody has access to. There needs to be some strict. You're not going to cross a firewall into some other tenant's data, right? At the same time, there's still the need for data sharing. Right, so we have situations where, one company, in fact, wants to share a certain amount of data with another company on the same cloud. So you need to allow for those sorts of things as well. Where are those policies set? What administrator is responsible for that? What's the UI, or how do you set up that policy that allows the sharing of otherwise firewalled pieces of data, right? Another one that's very important to a lot of our clients is this idea of the frequent iterative rollout of features. Like I said, when you think about how cloud systems are essentially developed, every 2 or so weeks, right, 2 to 4 weeks, some new feature, however small it is coming out iteratively. In fact, you might be pulling some stuff back as well while you're at it. If you think about how a lot of the packaged products are working today, they're not like that at all. And I'll get more into this one in a minute. But essentially, with an identity product, the idea is you kind of spend a year ramping it up, testing it and everything, and then at some point you have this big rollout monolithically, right? And then everybody gets access to whatever features are in the product, so to speak, and then you let that sit for a year, and then you sort of patch it while you're doing that. That's kind of the normal enterprise mode. That's not what's happening, though, in cloud. There's very specific iterative and, in some cases, minuscule changes that basically bring new iterative features or looks or that sort of thing to the cloud offering. And yeah, that's not something that really was anticipated by a lot of these identity services, or identity products, I should say. I spent a little bit more time on this one about account creation flows. It gets a little bit more into provisioning, right? So if you're familiar with the classic provisioning systems, one of the things that's different about cloud is that, look, you're vetting oftentimes people who are not in an HR database, as I said before. So great, College Board, for example, we have one of our employees at IC Consult came from College Board, and a couple of us did kind of help them with this too. So in the past, we worked on this. The idea is, though, if you're a student and you take an AP test or something, right, and you're trying to find out your score, and you want to go out and use your the College Board website to do a number of activities, including college planning or whatever it may be. Well, you're a student. You're not exactly in College Board's HR system, right? So how then do you validate that this person is the person they say they are, right? And in some cases, there's some exchange of mail, right? And they have to come back with a number. There are other, there's a bunch of routines that we use to basically validate folks. And we're using their private email and not some corporate email system, that we have some sort of authoritative source for. In addition, people are bringing also their own devices, right? So you have to register those, and you say, okay, we can allow employees to access our corporate resources or our cloud services from their own device, but then how do we control anything on the device? So device registration also becomes kind of interesting, right? Because it's not a piece of corporate property anymore. There are password reset flows, and there's a number of these. I'm just kind of mentioning this one in particular, where if you're on a cloud site and you reset your password, once you reset the password, you should already be logged in, right? Like, weirdly, a lot of these access management tools don't really do that for you, and so that you have to figure out, okay, the user experience should be such, I run through this little drill, and when I hit enter and it's validating the password, I shouldn't have to then go exit the site and then come back in with my new password. I mean, you probably experienced that, right? It's super annoying. You completely lose the context and so on. So a lot of our clients are saying we want what we call auto login after a password reset. But yeah, that's not necessarily out there. It's something you have to kind of anticipate. There's also something we call page 2 functionality, which could be 2N, right? Meaning that a lot of times with access management products, you type in a URL, the access manager realizes that the destination you're going to requires an authentication that you don't have, so it stops you and asks you for a password or something. It gets it, and then it's like, okay, so I'm just going to let you through then. I'm going to let you go to this URL. Well, what you would really like to have happen is to say, well, actually not so fast. Let's run you through a couple more flows, right, depending on, and have that flow maybe even be dependent on where you're coming from, what time of day it is, who you are, your role, like whatever it ends up being. There could be some registration flow they want you to go through, and then eventually get back to your target, right? Not all that easy to do with today's access management products, right? I don't know if anybody's tried that before, but if you have, then you know what I'm saying. And then finally, multiple personas. I've talked to a few of you, I think, already last night even, about dealing with customers and so on. That when you're dealing with a customer profile, the customer will come in, create their own account, right? Come back, I don't know, 6 months later, create another account because they forgot their other one or forgot their password or there's some other reason. Or now you're offering a Facebook thing now where they can come in from Facebook and then they forgot. Anyway, so suddenly you end up with 3 or 4, 5 different accounts for various maybe good reasons in some cases. And so, how do you deal with then a consumer population where you can't always easily funnel it down to, okay, there's one person, one account, right? In some cases, you don't really want that to have that happen. So, but how do you deal with that then, right, in terms of an access model and so on? And finally, custom UI. I mean, we're finding that a lot of the access products and the identity products have a UI, but it was anticipated for users who were in the enterprise who had a high degree of technical knowledge and new sort of LDAP terms and other kinds of things, and they were never meant for people who, and they're not flexible enough to really fit into a cloud structure for some offering that you have, right? And so in 80% of the cases or better, we kind of just need access to an API, and then we're using a custom UI again, right? So just to review that in a more pictorial sense, back then, companies, in fact, a lot of you probably still do this today, where you kind of own your own data center, and then there's some corporate platform you specialized on, and some database maybe you specialized on or something, and then you go and buy all these identity products, right? That are packaged, and they have their UIs, and you roll them out, and there's a 1 or 2 year time frame. And we've done a lot of these, right? I mean, and I've seen a lot of this stuff go down where you have some 2 and 3 and 4 year window, and you're getting, and this is totally the enterprise model. There's nothing wrong with it, but it makes the assumption that you have an IT department, that there's a data center there, that basically you're using packaged product, and you're good at deploying it. There's a certain run cycle, and there's a big drop at some point, where you suddenly have provisioning and it's doing all these crazy things for you and it's great, right? That is not the cloud model though. I mean, the cloud model is you have an ability to go out to the cloud. There's a certain amount of computing capability. I'm nearly done out of time. I'm going to have to cruise through this. But basically, iteratively, what you're trying to do, every few weeks you're releasing some new piece of functionality. And you need to be able to do that with very, very low overhead. Meaning that it's practically, once you release it, from there on out, it's sort of self-service and it kind of runs itself. So the question is, all right, so is IDM, as we know it, kind of out of its league, or is it really up to the task? Well, back in the day when I was at Burton Group, I kind of presented this, this slide here that showed like the heritage, as it were, of all the different vendors in the identity management market. In a matter of time, I'll try to wrap this up real fast. By the way, this is German. Man ist, was man ist. Is that, you recognize that? You are what you eat, right? So that's actually better in German. So, you know, memorize that. It's like a little, that's a nice takeaway, I think, today. But, and in fact, you all just ate like IC Consult M&Ms. So there you go, right? You're all baptized into it. But anyway, the idea is all of, if you look deeply into some of these products, I don't know if you can kind of read this thing. I'm picking on Oracle right here. You start reading into the documentation and you realize that it's actually mentioning, let me see if I can use this laser. Maybe not. Yeah, right here. It says accelerate type user. Well, what does this word accelerate refer to? Well, that's the product they acquired, right? Look, I'm not picking on anybody per se, but these companies that acquire these products don't go change them architecturally very often, right? They sort of use them for a while. So the products that you got, you know, the products that were on the market 10 years ago are still the products that are being sold today. It doesn't, just because they're in a different label doesn't mean that they, you know, the same thing, right? So what's to do about that? So, you know, does that mean they're trash and we should throw them out? Well, you know, maybe. This guy's making, this artist here is making a nice picture of Lindsay Lohan out of trash, which I think is kind of, you know, fitting. Which I guess there's a statement there somewhere. But the idea is, like, look, these identity management products are, you know, are actually, they've been through a lot, right? And they've been out there for a while. And we believe at IC Consult that, you know, that there's all kinds of really good functionality out there. You just have to kind of know what you're doing and how to assemble it in such a way that it's going to be useful, okay? And in fact, we've helped companies do a number of things like multi-tenant LDAP design, okay? And even the product teams were a little shocked by some of this sometimes, but you know, we had to kind of validate it with them. Progressive profile creation, so I mentioned the College Board in particular, you know, where you start with kind of a low barrier account, meaning it's easy to get an account very quickly, but then as you move to higher security accesses and so on, that account becomes fleshed out even better and more secure and so on. Automated rollout of products. How do we get to the point where the identity management products themselves are very easily rolled out without a lot of human intervention? And API level access control. All right, so in summary, yeah, I think that identity products are strained when you apply them to cloud use cases. There are many places you get to where you find out that the products that are on the market today didn't fully anticipate what it would mean to be deployed to the cloud. I think that's true not just of identity products, but really anything that you're trying to use in a cloud system today. But I think it does mark a good starting point. There's a lot of really good and excellent engineering work that has gone into and use, right, that has gone into a lot of these products. And so to just throw them out and ignore them and start from scratch is a completely bad idea, right? So you need to have a look at what's going on. And you need to use these products, though, and what's available in them to the best of their abilities and fill in the gaps. And that's where, you know, we hope that we can help some of that. There are lots of folks in the room that probably can as well. But that's my encouragement to you today. And that's all I had to say for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike.